All right, Joshua, it is time to make national championship picks.
Okay.
I'm putting you on the spot. I'm going to make you go first. As we look at the bracket, we talked about this, right? Oregon, #1 overall seed. Georgia, path looks pretty clear, I think, depending on how terrified you are of, let's say, Notre Dame or Indiana. Penn State and Texas might have an easier quarterfinal matchup to get to the semis. Walk me through your picks and who's going to win it all.
Yeah, I mean, like I looked at Georgia, and certainly I do like their path. I think there's a question about who's playing quarterback and how healthy, how good is the quarterback playing. So kind of leaning away from that for that very reason. Penn State, I mentioned, this is the opportunity. I fully expect Penn State to be in the semis, and then anything can happen from that point. They pushed Oregon around up front, ran the ball extremely well. As you mentioned, Drew Aller played a great game. And if that defensive front gets going, the secondary is not an issue. Like, they have a shot. But ultimately, I think I like Oregon because I like Oregon. Yeah. They've been consistent all year long. Dillon Gabriel, phenomenal, can use his legs, really accurate with his arm. And there are some throws that he made blind in the Big Ten championship game that were really good. And then their defense, very porous, but they've got athletes out there. They like to hit, and typically they've played better throughout the season. Oregon just feels like a team right now that is on a national championship path.
They also have made stops when they've needed to in some of these big games. I mean, what we saw Penn State do to them was something that we haven't really seen some of the good offenses that they've gone up against do. I'm also going to ride with Oregon. This was a team that I picked in the preseason as my national championship
look
pick.
At you being right. Potentially.
Hey, at least they're the #1 overall seed. That does make me look pretty good. I also had Dillon Gabriel as my preseason Heisman pick, and I think in a different format, like the 4-team playoff, Dillon Gabriel probably wins the Heisman.
Yeah,
because he'd be the quarterback of one of the teams we're talking about all season, but we've been casting a wider net, paying attention to more teams this year, and that's why I hope he is at least a finalist in New York City, but I trust him. I don't think that there's that many quarterbacks this year that I trust, like I trust Dillon Gabriel, to make the right decisions, to set his teammates up for success. He's got amazing weapons, and we see them. The tight ends, Tez Johnson, he's got dudes to get the ball to in space, and that's where Oregon really thrives. I just don't know that many teams are going to be able to stop them. They have survived their clunkers.
Yep.
They have survived the ups and downs. They've been up for big games. They played well. They have made no doubt about how good they can be. And Dan Lanning, master motivator as well. So I feel like they'll be able to weather the ups and downs of this bracket. Like, it's going to take a while. You're going to need to be a really talented and a deep team to win the college football playoff with this many games against good teams. The bye certainly helps. I think even in a rematch against Ohio State, I believed Oregon should have won that game by more. I think they left points out on the field in Autzen. I think they could beat Tennessee. I think they can beat Texas, Arizona State, whoever they're going to play in the semifinals as well. So I certainly think the Ducks are good enough to do it. I think they could end up being the great team in a year where we think maybe there's some good teams but not great ones. They might be that great team.
I'm totally there. You mentioned the quarterback trustworthiness. Like, I don't even think there's a question about it with the quarterbacks in this field. And it's not to disrespect any of those other guys. Dillon Gabriel's just been that consistent all year long. This is a low variance team, right? Like, we've seen Ohio State when they're playing their best ball. I like them a lot. When they're playing their worst ball, they'll lose to a team that they have no business losing to. Like, you can make that argument for a lot of teams out here. Texas, we don't quite know what the variance is because the only good team they've played is Georgia. Like,
and they struggled,
you know,
in different ways, both times,
lingering in the back of your mind. I will say, though, in terms of the depth, the one thing that did stand out to me for Oregon is their D-line rotation in the Big Ten championship game wasn't as deep as I thought it was going to be. I think in this postseason, you got to roll all the bodies through there. You got to be able to trust the guys. I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue, though, because they do have guys that can take over at that spot anyway.
Yeah, and I think the quick strike ability of their offense is something that when your back's against a wall in a game, they can do that. They can get themselves back in. It's interesting, though, because I do think depth is going to be really important. Veteran players, experienced players, guys who have been through something like this before. And that's why I think Georgia's going to go deep in this bracket.
Yeah,
I know they've been really inconsistent this year, but like that, the roster is there. Like, Kirby has built a roster that has the type of depth to survive a couple injuries, to survive the wear and tear of these games. Notre Dame, we've seen do it, so I also feel decent about them, although I don't know if they have like receivers that can break open a game. So that's something that is a factor that I don't think we know how it's going to impact the playoff yet.
Right, and like for Notre Dame, coaching-wise, love Marcus Freeman. We've seen him rise to the occasion in the big games, and so I think there's some confidence that comes from that. Haven't necessarily seen him like make a playoff run, and so we got to see that. I think that's where the Georgia pick is enticing for a lot of people.
For Kirby.
We know who Kirby is in these situations. We know big game Kirby, right? Like he goes on the road to Texas and gets a win, gets the rematch. Oh, you know, it's hard to beat the same team twice. Well, is it?
Yeah.
Like he does it, and it's a big game, and so I think there is confidence from watching Kirby operate that he might be able to put it together.
Yeah, Dan Lanning has not yet won a national championship. He's still the coach that I would pick today if I was starting a program.
He's been around all the guys who have won them too.
He's been on rosters. He has been on staff.
He knows how they do it.
He knows how they do it. One thing that I think is going to be really cool is getting Dan Lanning in the playoff. Oh, yeah. That type of opportunity and spotlight for him. Who again, that's who I would want as my coach in 2024.
You know,
in college football,
who he is. Without being a complete psychopath, he's young Urban Meyer. Master motivator. Right? Like he cares about special teams, will try to find the edges in the game. He is a phenomenal recruiter. Like just the energy and the enthusiasm on game day and putting together a program right now that might be able to win a national title.
Yeah, will he be the next coach to win a national championship?